Hi, everybody. Welcome to Alexa Developer Office Hours. It is July 11th, and I'm here to talk to a wonderful guest again today. Welcome to the show. I know we were off last week because it was the 4th of July, but my friend Optimus Prime is here to remind you all that today is Prime Day. So please celebrate in accordance with if you want to go shopping on Amazon. I will give the whole speech about how important Optimus Prime is to my life, but we must all celebrate. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming by today. I would like to make a couple of announcements, as I always do, before we start the show. First of all, I have the little announcements down the banners today. We have a few new blog articles for you to check out. Normally, I'm like rattling off the individual blog articles, but we have just a lot to share these last couple of weeks, especially since we've been off office hours or so. What we've done is just prepare everything for you at one URL. If you click on that URL, alexa.design/blog articles, you'll be able to view all the new Alexa design blogs will be posted over the past couple weeks. And let me tell you, there's a lot of great stuff. So please do check that out. I would also like to announce that if you haven't seen, maybe you have seen, but if you haven't, Office Hours has a new webpage. So we actually have a landing page now for Developer Office Hours. You can go here, alexa.design/office hours, or, on the Alexa developer portal, you'll actually see it. And that's going to list all of our future shows for you. So in the future, when you're ready to see what's going on, we're going to have a schedule you can actually add to your calendar. There's a particular topic that you want to discuss, you can check it out, add it to your calendar, and then you will never miss a show. And then you'll also know if we have any changes or anything that we want to update and change. I bought EchoBuds on early Prime Day deal. I love them so much. Yeah. I mean, the one thing about Prime Day that's good for me is that everybody's buying new Alexa devices. So there's a lot of people out there trying to pick up new devices, which is going to be great if you happen to be a skills developer, maybe a little more eyes on your skills. I bought a couple new hard drives for my PC this morning. I'm building a new PC, so I'm excited to get that underway and construct all of that. So I'm buying a lot of technology this week, and I'm going to go back to shopping after this conversation with y'all. So thank you all so much. So today on the show, I have a special guest today. This is going to be a really cool conversation. One of our Alexa champions is going to be on the show, and that is Ethan Richardson. If you're not familiar with the Alexa champions, you can see all the Alexa champions and their bios on this page right here. But I'm actually going to bring Ethan on, and today we're going to be talking about visual APL experiences. It's going to be super cool. We're going to see some cool demos. So Ethan, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Great. How are you? Thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome. I see your gamification book in the background. I have a lot of questions about that. I'm a big fan of game design and gamification, so we may have more topics to discuss. But I think you're here to tell us about your work with the Alexa presentation language, or APL, and some of the really cool design work that you've done with APL. So I would love to just jump right into the conversation and talk about the work. And then if you have anything you want me to put on screen and share, we can show it off. So how did you get started as an APL developer?
Yeah, so it's about a few years ago, I was building skills, and I've realized that, the visual side was a bit lacking in most skills. Like most people were just using the basic templates. And I thought, well, I wanted to bring a bit more life to my skills. And I thought, well, how can I do that? And there was this thing about APL, and I dabbled in it, I looked at the documentation, and it was very difficult at the start. I must admit, it was very, overwhelming, all the documentation, all of that stuff to learn. But I just really, from a young age, I've always liked design. I've always liked how things look, colors and shapes and textures. So I really thought, okay, well, let's dive into that and see what I can do. So there wasn't any projects that I was doing at the time that involved any visuals. So I just basically took it upon myself to say, well, okay, let's learn this and see what it's all about. How does it work? Can I make something? Can I put this square on the screen? Can I turn it green? Can I turn it blue? Just really basic things. And then somebody told me, a friend of mine said, look, you need to, specialize in this because, nobody else is really doing it. And there weren't many examples at the time So I thought, well, okay, let me take it upon myself. And I started to do real basic APL, really terrible stuff at the time. Looking back now, it's kind of a bit embarrassing. And I just
Everybody
kept on.
starts somewhere, right? Yeah, you have to start at the
Exactly.
beginning before you can become advanced.
Yeah, it's a bit cringeworthy, but it's definitely, you start from somewhere. And I decided to just, keep on just changing things, doing side projects. And one of the projects that I wanted to do, because I'm a really big Manchester United fan, I wanted to have like a dashboard of like all the games happening, all the players. And I decided, well, okay, let's create something visual. And on my screen, if you share my screen, you'll see what I decided to.
Yeah, let's go ahead and show that off.
Yeah.
Oh, very, very nice. Very nice.
So it was about the time when the Echo Show 15 came out,
Mm-hmm,
and it
mm-hmm.
was this, it's a great opportunity, large screen. So I decided basically to build like a dashboard of all the news that was happening on Manchester United, and I just basically just went and grabbed some information and just thought, well, okay, how can I make this look similar to the Echo Home
Mm-hmm.
screen? And the Echo Home screen has got like, different tiles, and I thought, okay, let's use that as inspiration. And I just thought, okay, Lord, let's just start simple. How do I put an image on the left-hand side? And I did that. And then how do I put one in the middle? And I tried to just keep it like fresh, and you can see it rotates on the right-hand side here.
Yeah, I was about to ask about that. You've got like a little rotating slideshow of
Yes,
products on the side there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I realized that you've only got a limited amount of real estate. And I was thinking,
Mm-hmm.
well, how can I make this seem bigger? How can I put more content on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, there's a component called a pager.
Mm-hmm.
And the pager, you can actually swipe through different pages manually. And then I thought, well, how can I make this, happen on its own? And so I looked in the documentation and just figured out how to do that. And yeah, it was just a side project. It was just purely out of interest. I posted on LinkedIn all the progress from writing on pieces of paper to how it's designed, like a small mini project. And that sort of
Oh.
kept me inspired about how to, finish it. I really wanted to finish it and make it look something really special.
Yeah, I'd love to
Um,
ask some questions about your
yeah, sure,
process. So you start
sure.
out with a piece of paper and you just draw it out, sketch it
Yes.
out. Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
I have something like this, which is upside down,
mm-hmm.
but essentially it's like a rough sketch of where things should be, purely just on the top of my head, like thinking, well, how is it going to look? How different screens are going to be laid out? And this is purely just for me to have a visual reference about how the different screens will look.
I'll take this off
It's
for a second.
nothing
Just
scientific, but
yeah, yeah.
starting simple is really it solidifies that in your mind.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And then what I do from there is that then I think about, okay, well, what components are needed? So okay, I need a button. How do I create a button? I need an image which rounded corners. How would I go about doing that? So it's like a step-by-step process by having the whole idea in my head and then splitting it up into bite-sized bits and then
mm-hmm,
researching about how do I do this and do that.
mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to learn, really, because there's so many features of APL. It's really, really, really amazing what you can do with APL, but not to become overwhelmed. It's by having the idea about, I want to put an image in the left-hand corner,
Mm-hmm.
and then, okay, how can I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And doing that in that way. So that's how I go about my process.
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking about how does that scale onto different devices. So you've got the Echo Show 5, the smallest
Mm-hmm.
version. You've got the Echo Show 8, the Echo Show 10,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about how that scales up, and having those dimensions in my mind, and then creating styles to change each image so they're responsive to the different viewports or the different device sizes.
So for an Echo
Yeah,
Show 5, would you
yeah,
still have all of these panels or would you
no.
show different ones? Okay, so
So
so you change it depending on the screen size, yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so because of the real estate, you can't shrink
Right.
down what you see here to an
Mm-hmm.
Echo Show 5. It wouldn't work. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to then sort of like say, okay, what do I want it to be? So maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
just a one static full screen image, and that would
Right,
be enough for an Echo Show 5. But then the
right.
larger you get, the more real estate you have. So then you can start showing different elements. And obviously this is a Echo Show 15,
Mm-hmm.
and you can really get to, go to town on different elements.
Yeah, the
To make
15
something
has
look
a
good.
lot of real estate where you can have like
Yeah.
a lot of really big visuals on there and show off what you've
hmm
got. Yeah.
hmm
So these images that you've sourced are all like official images and videos?
Yes, yeah.
Mm,
I've just taken them off the internet, but it's purely for a personal project. It wasn't a
mhm,
commercial thing. It was just
mhm,
purely I wanted to do this to see if I can challenge myself to build it. And
mhm,
it took me about 3 months because I had to research everything by hand.
mhm.
But it was a good challenge, and this is what came out of it.
And this
Purely
was your
all
first
APL.
major personal project in APL?
Yes, this was my first one. It was a bit
Mm,
challenging, but
definitely.
I think it's about 1,000 lines, 2,000 lines of code. So, yeah, about 2,000 lines of code by hand.
Wow. So let's talk about your tools. I see that
Yep,
you're in APL Ninja.
yep, yep.
Can you talk a little bit about how that helps your process?
Yep, so that helps a lot because there's many features. For example, you can stop the screen refreshing. So in APL, when you've got, for example, touch wrappers, which are areas of the screen which take a touch input, that can actually get focused when you reload the screen. So in APL Ninja, you have a feature where you can obviously just stop it auto updating, which enables you to code a certain part and it not to affect other parts of the screen, and also component highlighting, so you can actually go with your cursor to different parts of the code and get the part highlighted on the visual side, so you know which side you're editing. So it's a game changer for me. This is without this, yeah, it makes life a lot easier. And also, you can actually go through the different devices and see how
Yeah.
it looks. You can actually put like a device frame and see how it looks with the frame and without the frame. You can change it to be landscape or portrait. So
Mhm,
there's many different tools here. But I always start from a concept. So I have a
mhm,
concept in mind,
mhm.
and I usually use, like, for example, tools such as Dribble
Oh, okay.
to get ideas about different layouts, and I collect different visual designs and UI designs. So this is my collection. And
Oh,
then
cool.
once I like something, I just think, okay, this is nice. Take inspiration from, obviously there are other sites available, not
Mhm,
just
mhm,
Dribble.
mhm.
But you can see here different designers have created different things, and
No,
I've
it's
taken
actually
inspiration from
really
that.
cool. I've never used Dribble. So Dribble is a site basically that shows like different graphic design concepts.
Yes, yes. It's like
Oh, okay, okay.
designers who just put their work there for free, and you can actually go and
Wow.
find different inspiration. For example, travel site. If you were building a travel site, you can see how things
Oh,
would,
okay.
the layouts and how things could work.
How they
Really
choose to
good
lay it out.
resource. Definitely,
Oh, neat,
definitely.
neat, neat, neat. And that gives you what other tools have you found useful in your journey?
There's also inside of the developer console,
Hmm.
there's actually the ability to create SVG to
Hmm.
AVG, which is
Okay.
basically high res images. So I
Hmm.
use that a lot as well, to basically get really crisp graphics.
Oh, right, right,
And
right.
also, especially the icons and the logos, I convert them from SVG to AVG using that tool.
Hmm.
And also, I use the font converter inside of API Ninja. So in API
Oh,
Ninja, you can basically convert custom fonts, and they can
oh.
appear on screen. So that's
So
really
that
good.
you don't have to like make sure that the font is a match. You basically just convert it to a pixel
Yep,
font so that people can
yep,
see it.
exactly.
Oh, really useful. That's really cool.
Like, for example, Montserrat Lights, I brought that
Hmm.
in to get this type of effect on there. So yeah, that's how I do it.
Oh, and then it'll display the same at the same dimensions on everybody's screen
Hmm.
that way. So
Yeah.
there won't be like a because I know sometimes when you're doing like websites, if you don't
Hmm.
if they don't have a font installed, you kind of have to like go down the list of how people's fonts are set up on their machine
Yep.
and guess
Yeah.
and see if they have the font that you want it to look like. So back in the the CSS Zen Garden days when I was learning CSS, which I'm sure you're quite familiar, we would take the fonts and convert them to an image and then include alt text for screen readers
Mhm.
so that if there was somebody who wasn't able to get that font or see it, they would still but it would look the way you want them to look, which is just so important for that
Yeah.
graphic design. So that's really nice to be able to do that font conversion.
Yeah.
Technology's come a long way since the CSS
Yeah.
Zen Garden
Exactly.
days, but I'm sure you're familiar with having to wrangle
Yeah.
CSS to behave and pay attention to what you want to do.
Yeah. So from there, it's a iterative effect, really. You start learning things in APL,
Mhm,
you start learning little tips and tricks, and then you can start building and start pushing yourself.
mhm.
And then I decided to build this, which is essentially an experience for
Oh,
Coachella.
very
Um,
pretty.
and this is for the Fire TV only.
Okay.
And essentially, it's if I can play it,
Yeah.
it's basically a video, full screen video, and then you've got buttons at the bottom, and you can discover what Coachella is all about. You can obviously see it's got a remote control guiding users what to do. And they can just go through the different options. So they can go to the artists, for example, and see which artists are playing there. And this is all custom APL.
Wow. Really cool.
And all of this is custom assets that I created by hand. And then once you've got an idea about, okay, I want a gallery. So again, using the pager, which we discussed earlier, and just paging through, different assets. Again, just paging through and then attending. So it's basically a full end-to-end experience where
Really
you've got
cool.
the home screen and then the artists. And basically, it's just an experience about finding out what Coachella is.
Yeah.
So I built that.
Nice. Now, this is for Fire TV. You have a lot of real estate in Fire TV, right? What's the experience? Is experience a little bit different because you have that, that space?
Yeah. So with Fire TV, the first thing I usually do is make sure that I'm abiding by safe space. So with the Fire TV, people can actually change the scaling. So I think there's a 5% border around you can see it here, the 5% border here.
Oh, okay.
So I don't encroach onto that, just so it respects that scaling. Otherwise, if somebody does have scaling on and you've got a logo in the top left-hand corner, it will get cut off. So that's number one thing. Second thing after that is to realize that obviously people have got the remote control. So buttons are very useful there as a way of navigating the different screens. And also I try to make sure that the experience doesn't lag in any way. So what I do is I build a full APL document, and then based on which button they've clicked, I hide and show different visual assets to make it smooth.
So they're basically just being loaded up, and then you hide them. So there's there's not that transition period of having to load it in. Oh, I get it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
A little bit of a magic trick to make sure it's
yeah.
smooth.
And essentially, it's just about making sure that you've got white space, because you've got so much real estate. It's very easy to think, okay, I'll put this there, and this there, but it then confuses the user. So it's thinking about, well, how would I like to see this, navigation-wise, making it very clear what they need to do in terms of using a remote control, and just making it, utilizing that white space. And obviously, you can see here, you can go back to the gallery and using that navigation. So
and
yeah,
you've
this
got
is Fire TV.
The little call to action at the bottom
Yes.
to ask Alexa to talk about it, which is really nice. It's like a nice feature of connecting it back to the Alexa and how that coordinates.
And not forcing the user to use. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just asking about the little remote icon down the bottom too. It's very convenient.
Yeah, because some people don't want to use their voice; they want to use, the directional keypad. But some people do. So giving them that multimodal type of multi-input using their voice and also the buttons. Yeah.
Do you have any stats or feedback on how people interact with these tools when they get published?
Yeah. So most of all, people, I think it's about 20 to 25% of people don't really want to use their voice. So that's a stat that I keep in mind. It's about always giving them that ability to use the remote control. So yeah, because people might not be able to do it, or they may be in a situation where they're with other people and they're trying to just navigate this using remote control, not to wake.
Maybe the baby's sleeping, or you want to keep the volume low, or maybe you're in a conversation with somebody and you don't want to interrupt them to talk. Yeah, that makes sense. It's nice to hear that there's still a lot of folks that are interacting with it too, because I know that ever since I got my Fire TV, I have been talking to it. And at first it's like, oh, I forgot that I could talk to the TV, but then you kind of get used to it after a while. Really cool.
And then I just kept on going and pushing myself. I was like, okay, well, what else can I do? I just went a bit crazy and decided to go, I want to create a Netflix Prime Video type of experience for makeup. So I basically created this.
Love this.
Which is
Love
like it's like a sort of shopping experience, but on TV, where you can actually navigate using, for example, here you can navigate. Let me mute this 1 second. Yeah, so you can navigate the different sectors like eyes, face, lips, and then I integrated some type of copy of what all of the streaming services do. So you can see now video starts playing. So as a
Oh,
preview.
wow. So you actually
And
have a
then you,
video clip for every one of
yep,
these
hmm
segments?
yep.
Neat.
So it's similar to streaming,
Uh-huh.
how you can see the actual preview. And again here, again, she's talking about, and there's different APL things that you can do to pause and delay certain things happening. So I built that as well from scratch.
Can I talk about that fade at the
Yeah,
top, the way it
sure.
transitions from the
Yeah,
left side to the, is that an APL custom skin you've got going on there, or is that a trick with the video?
you can do that. That is actually a gradient on top of video. So you can actually put a gradient filter on top of images and video, and you can set the amount of gradient. And you can do that for the left and the bottom, which I've done there, as you can see.
So you've got like a masking gradient basically
Yes.
from one to the other. Yeah,
On
yeah.
top.
I'm seeing
Yeah.
some comments in the chat. The design looks so good. Yeah, they do look good. Yeah, this is really, really cool looking. Really slick.
This is basically a collection of all different types of APL tools that are fully available to anybody, using scrolling pages, using sequencers, using, like here you can delays. You can see the text comes up as you focus. So all these small little things are very important and make it come alive.
That's interesting. So why did you choose to have the text do that little delay? Does it just like make it seem more reactive?
Yeah, it just makes it look more reactive and makes it a bit more cleaner. So, for example, not to have the text on every single card. I wanted to make sure that when you give focus, then it comes up and it shows what it says. And it's just
it gives
those
you a
little
better
things.
idea
Yeah,
of what you selected.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I did that, and again, the highlighting as well. On focus, you can do certain things and you can run commands. So yeah, that took about 2 months to do.
Wow.
So as
Amazing.
you keep going and you keep going, you become, better at certain things. And again, the documents become very big. Like this is 1,000 lines of code.
Oh, honestly, I'm surprised it's only 1,000 lines of code. It's actually, it seems a lot more, like it'd be a lot more.
Because you can start becoming a bit more efficient with certain things. You can reuse components, and that brings down the size of the APL document. And then once you reuse them, for example, you can reuse the same style for each card and the same command for each card when it gets focus.
Right, so you just go back to the block of code that you already wrote.
Yeah. And then I continued that. And basically I decided to do the next iteration of creating some type of shopping experience, which is a video. And then when you pause it, you can then go to the different product.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Then it fast forwards the video to that product on screen.
So I was talking earlier about getting your shopping done today while things are on sale. There's another there's another way to do it. You can actually see the product she's using and talking about as she talks about it.
Yes.
What a cool experience.
Yes. So yeah. And then for brands as well. So it's not just my personal things. I work with big brands such as TripAdvisor, Lexus, Lucid, Honda. In my line of work, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work alongside agencies and also Amazon to bring about different experiences. For example, with the Lucid, this was an example of selling a car through the Fire TV or bringing awareness to the brand. So the client wanted a full screen video to introduce the car, and then enable the user to discover the car using the remote control. So it seamlessly fades out of this video in a second.
All right, so we get the car, we get the interior.
The car. And these are really basic concepts, like a video full screen.
Then it goes
and that fading into the car, and then the hotspots appearing on the car.
Oh, okay.
So if I wanted to go to this, I can find out about charging performance. design, storage, and then fading into another screen for a different type of page experience.
Cool.
So that was for Lucid. And
Mhm.
these are just collections of things that are available to everybody. These
Mhm.
things are not things that I've only got access to. They're
Oh,
all in the
so
documentation.
if people want to learn from what you've designed here, they can actually
Yep.
check out this code, the source code, and see it for themselves.
Not
Or
this one, but
or not the source code, but the
I do
design
actually
skills.
publish. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be the best way for me to get started learning how to do the things that you're doing?
The best way is to really just start from the very basics. The great thing about the update to the documentation is now you've got like sandboxes of code inside of the documentation. That wasn't available when I started. So now you can actually change the code inside the documentation and see how a box would change from green to red on the screen without having to write the code.
Yeah.
You can just change certain parts of it.
And we also
It's
have
amazing.
the Alexa Learning Lab, which is
Yes.
the way to do that. Yeah, way to do that. The sandboxes that help you really figure out what's what and how to get started there.
Yeah. And it's really just about learning the basics. So, for example, learning about text. Okay, how does that? Because most experiences need to have text.
Right.
Learning about changing colors, learning about font sizes, learning about how to do containers and how things appear on screen. And it's just building blocks essentially. Because when you have a building block, okay, how do I put this there and how do I put that there? Those are the foundations. Without that, you can't really build APL. And so it's just basically building up the different layers of knowledge. And then once you've done that, they can start thinking about, okay, well, how do I put that next to that? And thinking about absolute and relative positioning. It's a bit like CSS, essentially.
I was going to say, I mentioned CSS earlier, and I'm curious, like you doing this more advanced APL, how would you compare it to a CSS experience?
I think it's quite similar actually, because with APL you can build styles, and then you can apply styles and condition styles like you can do in CSS. So I've done that here. On the left-hand side, I've created basically my own styles here, and I've basically said, okay, names them, and there's different conditions you can say. Well, there's a base style, and then build up on top of that. So that's similar to CSS. And once you've then got that, the good thing about this is that you can save away that style and import them into different APLs. So you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can just create your own library of like, okay, well, this changes the font from black to blue, for example, and just save that away and pull that into any new APL document that you have.
Just keeping up. The more you make, the more you have a library of things that you can select from and choose and use. Right. When you were first getting started, what do you think was the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge was there was so much to learn, and it became a bit overwhelming. And because at the time when APL, I think it was one of the earlier versions, it was very difficult to organize everything. And because there weren't many examples at the time, now there are really good examples on APL Ninja. But at the time before that, it was very difficult to know, well, where to start learning. But now you've got the documentation with the code sandbox. It's easier now to do that. And also, I think it was very difficult to think about design because a lot of great coders are not great designers, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So it's about getting inspiration, and then I found the inspiration, and that pushed me forward to think about how can I do this in APL.
I think there's always that tension between the artist and designer and the coder. And a lot of times we talk about front end versus back end development. It's always nice to see when the synergy happens, when you can actually create that beautiful design and also have that beautiful code as well. I always love to see that. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat, which is why I'm drinking tea today this morning. But yeah, it's really, really cool. It's really beautiful. Couple comments in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and go to chat real quick. I've been thinking a lot about Alexa the past few months. Thank you. We think of you as well. Thank you for thinking of us. I'd love to see open source Alexa so I can train my robots in Alexa code. Well, Alexa itself is not open source, but we do have a GitHub. So if you want to check out some of the code that we post on GitHub, there is open source code for Alexa there. If you have any questions about where to get started with Alexa development, of course, you can come to our Slack. You can check out our documentation, and you can read some of the blogs that we've posted throughout. So thank you for your comment. I love to see whatever you choose to make with Alexa, and if it's robots, that's awesome too. We see a lot of people doing hardware hacks and stuff that integrate with Alexa, so it's wonderful. How are you? I'd like to know if this code will be available for us. Now, you said earlier this particular code is not open sourced, but there's a lot of good examples in APL Ninja, right?
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
And that's really great for learning about like fundamentals, like how to position certain features, images on the screen, how to do certain commands, and how to run them simultaneously or in sequence. So it's really a good resource by just looking at something and going into the code and go, well, how does that work? And you can actually copy the code and actually look at it and go, well, if I change this, what happens? And I learned a lot doing that way. I didn't know about the sequencer. I had no idea what that was until I looked into APL Ninja, and I learned that way. And that was
and we
really
also have the Alexa Learning Lab as well,
Yes.
which is part of our documentation. There's also, like you mentioned, that code sandbox that you can use. Every little snippet counts, especially examples and documentation. Yeah, absolutely. So all those code snippets, if you go to the Alexa Learning Lab, you can actually play with them, change them around, see them working interactively. And APL Ninja has that same functionality too, right? So you can adjust your code, you can see it happen. And then you can also, as you mentioned earlier, see the way it looks on different screen sizes, see the way it looks on different. So it's really just a really great resource, I think. And then you have the dev console open there.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
this console, this is one of the fine examples. So essentially this is for TripAdvisor. So I work closely with TripAdvisor on their experiences. They do a lot of experiences where they're trying to promote different countries, they're trying to promote different experiences. And this is for the Fire TV, if it loads up. Should do. So this is a series which is on Prime Video called The Wanderer, and they wanted to supplement that series with an interactive experience where you can actually go to the different parts of Abu Dhabi and find out about different locations. It also integrates APLA, which is like a high-res audio. So whenever you go to different parts, you can hear the sound.
Yeah, we might not have sound on stream, but if you check it out, you can go there, right? It's going to be on the developer. It's going to be on the you said it was on Prime Video?
Yes.
Oh, really cool.
So you can actually visit all the places where the actual host went to, and you can learn about the different ratings on TripAdvisor and all the different places like the Grand Mosque Center. And it was more of an experience for the TV, so you can just sit back and go, okay, well, where is he going, and learn a bit about the country and the culture. So that was on Fire TV, and that was really good to design it and also think about the sounds that go alongside the assets, the visual assets.
Give you a little bit of context for where they're going on the show.
Yeah.
And we did have we did share our GitHub link in the chat as well. So yeah, we're happy to help. We give y'all some code to get started on whatever your Alexa journey is. Those are some great places you can check out some of the code that we post for just getting started. Some of this more advanced stuff, that's going to be a journey, right? It's going to be
yeah definitely. It's definitely a journey of how to start small, like I did, and just build up your knowledge over time. And then you learn different tips and tricks, like for example, using CloudFront, which is a CDN, to make sure the assets load quicker, rather than just putting them straight from S3. So if you store your images, obviously if they're quite big, they're going to take a bit of time to render on the screen. So making sure you put those images behind a CDN is very, very important, to make sure that the user has a real seamless and great experience when viewing the assets. And great assets would make this amazing as well.
So can you talk a little bit about that process? Basically, you preload the asset, right?
Yes. So what I do in APL is the data that I'm passing, which contains the assets, I load them all up front so that it's got time to upload everything. So for example, maybe this image here isn't shown, but in the background it's loaded. And then in the APL, that's what controls the hiding and showing of certain assets. So it seems very seamless. You don't see any loading screens. You don't see any black loading areas because it's all loaded.
Yeah, it would be. Oh, sorry. It would be a weird experience if you had like a little loading bar or something pop up and it would just kind
Yeah,
of take you out of it. So it really just feels like one seamless like kiosk experience this way.
yeah. And again, like, you've got a set real estate on the screen, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
it. I
Mm-hmm.
think about screens, but having multiple. So in
Mm-hmm.
this example, you say you've got this screen, but then you've got another screen, and you
Wow.
can
Mm-hmm.
change the image for different parts of the experience. But
Mm-hmm.
essentially, it's a pager, a full screen pager, and on that one page, you've got this experience. You go to the next page, and you have another experience, different set of assets, but you can actually control which page the user sees, and that's
Mm-hmm.
another advanced technique that maximizes and extends the actual real estate that you have. So
Mm-hmm.
don't just think about this is all I have. You actually
Right.
have other different real estate that you can bring into play.
Basically a slideshow, different ways of
Yes,
showing different stuff.
yes,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And
So
I
it's
love the live. Thank you. But I have to get back to work. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for anybody who takes time out of their workday or their not workday to join with us today. It's always nice to see you. So thank you.
thank you.
Um, um, Gosh, I have a couple other questions.
Sure.
This is one of those like everybody always asks artists this, but like, what inspires you? Where do you get your ideas from? I know you mentioned some graphic design stuff. How do you keep innovating and pushing the envelope?
I just look at like TV, for example. I look at
Mm-hmm.
like, for example, maybe streaming apps. I look
Mm-hmm.
at apps on the mobile phone. I look at like adverts in the real world as you're driving, and I look at shapes and I look at how things are put together. And I think, well, how can I do that? Like, um, for example, maybe this example here, like how do I put this gradient at the bottom here? And I just
Mm-hmm.
think about how can I do this? And I get inspired about just the rounded corners, like even small things.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make that work? And that's where I get my inspiration from, by looking at other people's work and not copying it fully, but just
Right.
taking parts and say, well, that looks good. I could use this menu system at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put that into practice. I like how this font is bigger than the one above, and researching different fonts and how the background can be maybe moving instead of static. So I always try
Mm-hmm.
to push, and I never try to copy what somebody else has done in a skill.
Right.
I try to think, well, how can I do something that's never been done before? Like I'm working on a Where's Wally skill now. I don't know if people know what Where's Wally is, but it's like a massive, complicated
Mm-hmm.
puzzle where you have to find the little character, and usually it's in physical books. But then I
Mm-hmm.
want to, how can I put that in a skill where you can actually use the remote control or touch the screen to zoom in on different parts of the image to find the little character?
Mm-hmm.
So I take
Oh,
inspiration
fun,
from like
fun.
old school type of games and physical real world books as
I'm
well.
pretty sure I still have one of those, although in the States we call them Where's Waldo, but it's the same
Yeah,
concept.
yeah,
We
it's the
call them
same
Where's Waldo.
concept.
But yep, I
Yeah,
think I think pretty sure I still have one of those laying around here somewhere. They're always fun, the little puzzle of trying to
yeah,
find the spot the hidden object. It's inspiring because there's a whole genre of games out there, the hidden object game
mm,
genre. And it might be really, really cool to see somebody do a hidden object genre APL experience where you did, like you mentioned, and zoom in on. I bet
yeah,
people would really enjoy that. Really cool.
yeah. And just looking at again, I just spend hours and hours and go through. I just collect different things. I just keep scrolling every single day to think about, okay, well, how does, I don't know, like for example, this, how do these? Oh, this is a nice layout of how to scroll through content and move content from the right to the left. So just all these little things I just write notes about as I'm
Do
as
you
I'm
spend
scrolling
like
through.
almost half your time researching
Yes.
before you dive into creating one of these projects?
Yes. If somebody gives me a design, I look at it and then I go, okay, well, how would I do that? Like if somebody gave me this design, I would be like, well, okay, what in APL can give me this functionality of, sliding content? What in
Mm-hmm.
APL can give me the buttons? And obviously you
Mm-hmm.
have native APL buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually basically start with like a design like this, and
Mm-hmm.
I just tick it and I just literally write down, okay, this is a pager, this is
Mm-hmm.
text. And it basically makes you realize that you can actually do this in APL, and it gives you confidence that, okay, these are the components to make up such a design. So that's the way that I believe that that's the way it should be done.
Do you have any advice or like best practices for designing for these screens that you'd love to share with anybody who wants to get started adding visuals or maybe wants to take their visuals to the next level?
Yep. Start simple. Like really
Mhm,
start simple. Like start with a full screen image. Get that on
mhm,
screen.
mhm.
Use that as a background. Then think about, where can certain elements bring value to the skill? Because for me, the visual side has to complement the actual audio. So I always say that APL, makes your skill look as good as it sounds. So, the audio side,
Right,
we've all
right.
worked on that. We've all done our conversational design, but the
Mhm.
visuals need to complement that and not take over and, confuse the user of how too many having too many things on screen. So
Right.
just really doing something really simple, one interaction at a time, having a carousel at the bottom, and that's it. It doesn't have
Mhm,
to be over the top. In some cases, you do,
mhm,
um,
mhm.
but in some cases, it can be really simple. As for example, this just
Uh-huh.
having a background and one moving component, and that's it really. That's the number one tip I'd give is to really keep it simple and make sure the screen is not so cluttered with
Right.
things that the user can touch and move across because it just gets confusing for the user.
Yeah. I'd imagine the potential you to get overwhelmed, and just get super excited and just start adding more and more and more stuff is very much
Yeah,
there, right? Like you would think, oh,
yeah,
I could add this slider and I could add this button and I could add this, but then,
yeah,
especially if somebody is maybe using a remote to navigate,
yeah,
they wouldn't necessarily know like what am I supposed to click on in this or what am I supposed
yeah.
to select in this.
Making it super easy and clear, like,
Mhm,
this is the main navigation at the bottom. That's
mhm,
it. There isn't another one at the top. There isn't something that flies in from the left. Just really using something
mhm,
quite clean and simple.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and yeah, just making sure that the user has one thing to focus on. Okay, they need to
mhm,
go through this, and they can use their remote control
mhm.
quite easily, and they can go back to the gallery. So it's very clean and very simple to use. That's my main
Cool.
advice.
Cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you for sharing all your designs with us today. It seems like you've got a pretty broad portfolio of work. Um, Anything you can tell us about what your future plans are? Anything cool you're working on next, or is it all
Um,
secret
yeah,
science stuff?
a
Mhm,
lot of big company,
mhm,
I think, experiences because a lot of companies are realizing that the Fire TV is selling really well for Amazon,
mhm,
and that's
mhm,
really a big area where they can actually do branded experiences using banners on the Fire TV that actually link into an experience. So a lot of advertising is happening on the Fire TV, which is good and gives people the ability to, go into such experiences. So there's a lot of work around advertising that I'm working on now um, for a lot of major companies, and Amazon is really, especially Amazon ads, they're really pushing the envelope in terms of,
mhm,
working with big brands to make sure that they can actually showcase their products and their services. So I'm
mhm.
involved in a lot of that work as well, which is challenging.
Yeah,
A
it's a
lot of
lot. Yeah, it's definitely.
yeah, a lot of tight deadlines.
Uh,
But usually I'm
uh,
working on like 3 or 4 APL things at the
oh,
same
three,
time.
three or four at the same time?
Yes, yes,
Wow, that's a lot. That is a lot
yeah,
of challenge to work on.
yeah.
Aside from, I know you've got a lot of work in. What other cool experiences have you seen, especially on the screen devices like on the show? Because I yesterday I saw there was a Barbie experience and I was like, this is so dope. But what cool work have you experienced on there?
There's a lot of cool work around like games as well.
Hmm.
A lot of games there that people are doing. There was one actually experience that really inspired me, and I forgot. And excuse me because I forgot the
Sorry.
developer's name. But essentially, it was I think he won an award for it. It was one of the first APR. I think it was Stuart Pocklington, I believe. Sorry, I probably messed up his name. But essentially, it was like these cards that came on screen and they would shake and they would wobble, and I was like, at the time, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And
Hmm.
it was, you had like, it was like a sequence of cards and it was like a game that you could actually like choose different cards and they
Oh
would
yeah,
fight
yeah.
against each other. And that really inspired me. That was the main APR thing that I was like, wow, this is what you can do. Okay, I'm doing this. This is what I want to do. This is all.
Mhm.
And I do it 7 days a week. This is why I do
That's
APR
that
7 days a week.
7 days a week, no
Yes.
breaks.
Yeah, Saturday and Sunday. I love this. I love
Work
this stuff.
working hard on it, right?
Yes.
So it sounds like you really have found APL to be a pretty robust language for expression, which is really cool.
Yes, it's very it works. There are
Hmm.
some differences between devices and how APL works, but they're not many. But
Hmm.
it's good that you can actually use something and scale it to the different devices. You don't have to learn a new pager for the Echo Show 8 and the Echo Show
Hmm.
5. It just works. And that's great. You don't have to reinvent the wheel because there's a lot of APL components out of the box that just work. You don't have to, code a sequencer. It just
That's
works.
very
You don't
encouraging
have
to
to
hear.
code, you know, a video. How do I
Mhm.
get video on screen? It just
Right,
works.
right.
And that's one of the great things. You don't have to think about, okay, well, how do I do this? It's all there in the documentation, and it's
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
well laid out.
I, I'm happy to hear the documentation works well for you because I know there's always questions about it. I'll just say, just in case any of our product team ends up watching this later, if you had a wish list, what else do you think would be great to have as a function
Oh,
in
I love
APL?
this question. I would love APL on the mobile. That
Oh, right, on
that
the app,
is
on the app.
something,
Hmm.
yeah, on the Alexa app. That
Hmm.
would be
Just curious.
one of the top things I would like. Also, for the Fire TV to have like the ability to have a partial skill, so it doesn't overlap the whole experience. Let's say someone is
Hmm.
watching
Oh,
a
like a picture
movie.
in picture.
Yeah, like
Oh,
having the
okay.
bottom half of the screen be
Maybe
your
someday
skill.
in the future.
That would be amazing. So like you could check the weather and it would just pop up from the bottom, and while you're still watching the video on whichever service it is, that
That
so
makes sense.
rather than
Yeah.
having the full screen experience, you just have it
Yeah.
at the bottom. That would be
I,
amazing.
I know I work here and I'm expected to say that, but say this, but I really do like Prime Video. I found it to be so great because there's so much good old stuff on there. I'm kind of an
Mhm.
old movie junkie, so I like to just dig in and see like what's in the back catalog, and it's really nice to have. So,
Yeah. And support for GIFs as well. So at the
oh
moment,
yeah.
APL doesn't support GIFs. So that would be, I know
Hmm.
you support Lottie files, which is good, but having GIFs as well, that would really help.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there's more coming in the pipeline, but it seems like every other month there's new versions, there's new things coming out in APL to integrate more into the skill, which is great, and I love that.
They do update APL pretty frequently, and we have had the APL team on here before. Of course, they can't talk about like what's in the future because we don't always talk about that until we're ready to show it off. But when they had them on here last time, and maybe we'll have them on again next time there's more updates because it's always cool to see the new features that they have. Like they showed all the different
Hmm.
different transitions that they've added
Yeah,
and the different masking stuff that they added, and I have a art background, so I'm always really excited to see the visuals.
yeah.
I've also done a lot of coding, obviously, and I've done a lot of AI, but I like to see the visuals. I think I really think it just brings it all together. And
Mm,
if you can have that visual, of course, we have a lot of devices out there that don't have the screen, so people design for both. But if you do have that visual, it's really cool to see how it gets brought together.
yeah,
Um, Question in the
yeah.
chat: what's that code? APL? Yeah, it's APL, Alexa Presentation Language. And you can learn more about it in our documentation or on Alexa Learning Lab, in our GitHub, and on this site, apl.ninja, which is a really good resource. And APL Ninja has a bit of a community as well, right?
Yeah, it does. It's really I mean I can just go to it now, but API Ninja it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
There are loads of documents there you can just scroll through and just think, okay, well, how does that work? Like some things I'm really, and hats off to the creator. Yeah, Alexander is one
Alex.
of my heroes
Yeah.
basically.
One
And
another one
he's
of
really
our
helped.
champions created
Yes.
this website. This is actually an external website, but we love APL Ninja.
Hmm.
And if you want to see the code that people are writing, a lot of this is shared. So we looked at our
Yeah.
GitHub earlier, but this is another place where you can actually go check out people's code.
Yeah.
That people can share whatever they care to share. And if you want to see some examples of how you can get started with visuals, this is a cool repository of all that.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
again, you can
cool.
just go in and just look at the code. You can change it as you wish, and that's the beauty about APL. It's very flexible.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I find difficult with APL even now is the
Mm-hmm.
resizing for the different screens, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
do some mathematical calculations sometimes. But I usually just say, well, let's start with the smallest one, then create a style for the next biggest one, the extra 8. The extra 8 and the extra 10s share the same dimensions.
Okay.
So that's good. And then the Echo Show 15 is a different dimension, and the Fire TV is the same as well. So yeah, that's one of the things that takes the longest for me to do, because I start with one design, but then I have to make it work for all the different devices.
So your advice is to start with the smallest screen first, just to get the most
Yes.
important stuff out
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah. The round one, I think it was the spots. I don't really
yeah.
develop for that because I think it's
Okay.
discontinued. Yeah.
Right. It
Yeah.
just depends on what devices you want to support.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, there's loads of examples out there. So just
Other
get in.
questions in chat. Will Alexa get AR controllers? I don't think we have anything to share about that. But we do have people writing location-based skills, which is something that you can do. So if you use the location on your phone, there are skills that can activate location-based. So that's something you can look into. And thank you for the inspiring talk from LinkedIn. Yeah, thank you for the inspiring talk. It's really, really cool to see the work. I love looking at all the design and just keep pushing and innovating and creating new stuff. And anybody wants to talk about this more, stop by our Slack, stop by APL Ninja. You can post there, you can chat with the community there, and you can chat with us. I've created a cool location-based skill. I know. Whenever I think of location-based skills, I think of Havuma, of Craig. He writes the most cool location-based skills. Maybe sometime we'll have you on here to talk about that. And it's always great to have our. What I love about this conversation is a lot of times on developer office hours, we bring in folks from Amazon to talk about what we're working on. But it's so inspiring to see what folks outside of Amazon are working on and how you're taking these tools and honestly like raising the bar, right? Because I see so much innovation happening with pushing APL in another direction and making it come to life on these screen devices and just trying new things and experimenting. And we couldn't do that without our community. So any parting thoughts? We're almost out of time. We've got about 8 minutes maybe left. My timer says we've got a few minutes, but I know we're getting close to the end. I don't think you have any more demos to show, but anything else that you want to share with the folks out there today?
I think really, for anybody who's got a skill out there who just uses who maybe doesn't even have any visuals, just start off with a basic full screen image, just to have something there, because that delights people, because they're not expecting that. A lot of skills out there just don't have any visuals at all. So for you to put something there is better than nothing. And then just don't be scared just to say, okay, if they say this, maybe put another image on screen. Just something simple like that is definitely worth, and you will get a lot of people appreciating that. Also, try to incorporate APLA as well, which is the high-res audio as well, to go alongside the different images on screen. And then you'll start to see, okay, this can really make my skill come alive visually. And that's something that I would recommend people to do, because I always get asked, like, how do I get started with this? Oh, yours seems so complicated. And yes, these are two different specifications than what I've built. But, for myself, sometimes when I'm doing skills, I just think, okay, just do one full screen image or video and just stay with that. If that's enough, that's enough. And then build on top of that. Maybe put a title in the middle, change the color, and then you'll start to get inspired by different things that you see. And then you'll start saying, well, how do I maybe have this fade in? And then it's just an iterative thing where you just keep going and going and going. And then you get a bit obsessed like I do. And then I'm like, okay, I want to do this and this.
Adding more and more stuff to it. Yeah, even if you already have a skill in the store today and you've already got it out there and launched, you could always go back and add these visual components, right? For the folks that have the screen devices, and just gives a little bit of extra candy for anybody who's using a screen device. And then if they aren't using a screen device, they can still have your default experience. So it kind of works out.
And really people rate skills higher when they have visual elements to it as well. So if you want better ratings on your skill, then think about putting that in there. I always say that the visuals need to complement what the skill does. There's no point for have flashy visuals yet the conversational design is not there, or the skill doesn't function properly. So it's having, making sure that the visuals complement the skill. And that's what I would definitely recommend anybody to do.
Yeah. make that synergy between, if you've got a kid skill, for example, the bright fun colors. If you've got a travel skill, having those travel photos is really nice. And of course, one thing that I would say too as a designer is like always be careful of like the resolution of the pictures that you choose. You want it to load appropriately, but you also don't want it to be fuzzy or look too compressed. So you've got to find that right balance of like what looks good on different screens. And in some cases, like I think, different screen sizes, right? So you may load a smaller image for a smaller screen, all those things that you have to keep in mind when you're working with multiple different devices. And if you're familiar with the design on the phones, if you're making something for a phone, you have to think about everybody's different older versus newer phone models. So compared to this, it's not that many different screens to consider.
No,
it's a smaller amount.
Yeah, which is great, and the dimensions anyway. They're not going to change.
Right.
So
Right.
it's great. It's not like you have to do like iOS and Android. It's just it just works, and it's like you're right about making sure that the asset resolution is good, and also that if you do have a huge like 10 megabyte image, try and like there are tools online where you can actually minify and compress the image without losing the quality. So there are free online tools that you can do, which I use a lot to bring down the size and make them load quicker. So that's another thing as well to do.
But
so, yeah.
That's always great to see if you can find, especially free online tools. Everybody likes to hear that, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I use a lot of Photoshop, but that's not a free online tool. That one's a little bit more pricey. So
yeah, but yeah, it's a good journey. It's a good journey, and once you get into it, you really see the power of APL. Like it can get very complex, but it is very powerful. And you start small, and definitely the code sandbox inside the documentation for anybody who's starting out is really good, and also all the resources there. When I was starting out, there was nothing. Well, there was documentation, but there was no APL Ninja. There was no code sandbox. It was just literally read the documentation, figure it out yourself. There weren't many examples out there. So I'm a bit old school. So I've had to do it the hard way.
And everybody learns from each other, which is why it's so inspiring to have this community of developers working together, because we become better when we're asked these questions and these designs are pushed in these new and innovative ways. So I just want to thank you a lot for coming on the show today. It's been great having you. It's been great seeing your work.
Thank you.
Really, really excited to see what you make next. And for those of you that missed the intro, next week we're going to have my coworker Emerson on. We're going to be talking about devices and the enterprise side of things where he works. Just going to be a nice little back and forth conversation about what we're working on these days. Tune in next week. Thank you again, Ethan, for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And we'll see you all same time later.
Great.